Hey everybody, welcome to Gish Gallop Girl. I'm your host and lead researcher, Thomas Anderson, and with me as always is...
Matthew Anderson, your son.
Yes. All right, so we've had... I put the news of the show out on Reddit, and we have gotten a lot of new traffic, which is very cool. No patrons yet, but that is to be expected. Anyway, we are on Patreon, and we'll be dropping all those links in the show notes. You can pull them up on your podcast app. And also, we'll be talking about them later. But for right now, we are in Episode 9. We're in Blackout Chapter 1, Part 3. We're going to try to get through it tonight, plus the Candace show. At any rate, I want to start off this episode by giving a shout-out to Reddit user Hopeful Depression, who pointed out a gaffe I made in an earlier episode. I made the claim that one of Obama's speechwriters was Jon Favreau. And while the name was true, I thought it was famous writer, director, actor Jon Favreau.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was very wrong. While that one is an impressive person, so is the other one, who happens to be a totally different human named the exact same name. He's a known speechwriter, and I forever thought it was the Jon Favreau from the MCU that was also him. Turns out, different people. So thank you again, Hopeful Depression on Reddit, for the correction. And here's what's fucked up. I also shared in that same thread on Reddit, which we are Gish Gallop Girl on Reddit, by the way. I also shared in that same thread on Reddit the picture that made me think it was Jon Favreau. Yeah. It's a picture of Obama. It's a black and white photo of Obama sitting on like a couch, I think in the Oval Office. And there's a guy to his right in the picture that you can't see his face. He's kind of looking away, but it looks like Jon Favreau, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, the guy on the left looks nothing like the Jon Favreau that I know. So for years, having seen that picture seared in the back of my mind, I thought it was Jon Favreau, the movie guy. And Hopeful Depression agreed with me. He's like, oh, holy shit, that guy does look like Favreau. I was like, yeah, so, you know. But, yeah, just wanted to call that out. I promised him that I'd bring it up at the top of the show. I assume it's a him. If you're a her or they or whatever, my apologies. At any rate, moving on from the claims that Democrats equals the Klan, Candace tells some anecdotes about life in her paternal grandparents' home. Her only acknowledgement that her mother wasn't present is in the section where she says, "My grandfather expected my father and older brother to help out with the yard work. My sisters and I, however, were never required to do any such thing. Yard work was a man's job. It was that simple. Instead, my sisters and I, all but a year apart, needed to focus on behaving like respectable young girls." Her mother isn't mentioned. That's all I really want to say about that, because Candace discusses what living in the home was like. She doesn't really say anything bad about it, just that the time was almost wasted on her as a kid because she misses that time now. She tells about how her grandpa would wake up early every morning and make a large Southern-style breakfast for everyone, and how she messed with the thermostat one night and her grandfather called her out on it during morning prayer over breakfast, and she ran off and cried about it. As a 10-year-old kid, it messed with her head. He apologized for it, and that was that. But in typical Candace fashion, it took several pages to get through.
Yeah.
So, sparing everybody all of that. Moving on, Candace tells us that she was glad to be free of the rules and structure when she left her grandparents' home, but then she backtracks a bit to an incident that happened earlier in her life. In Candace's own words, I quote, and this takes a bit to get through. Yeah. "Much has been whispered about the hate crime that I experienced in high school. Leftists use it as a gotcha point. Their less than extraordinary claim is that I, quote, sued my school for racism, thereby proving that racism is real and I'm only pretending that it isn't for profit. My favorite part of this narrative is that it's always presented as an expose. We discovered something that Candace Owens doesn't want you to know." I laugh at the assertions. Foremost, because even a most preliminary of online searches of me will reveal that long before I entered politics, I gave a TEDx talk titled, "The Truth About Your Activism," which was about the hate crime that I experienced. So much for trying to hide it. Ironically, it was exactly this experience from my childhood that sobered me to the reality of race, politics, and those who profit from the perpetuation of both. The story begins one night in 2007 when I was curled up on a couch watching a film at my boyfriend's home. Throughout the film, my cell phone kept ringing. Since my service was spotty, I chose to ignore the calls and set my phone's ringer to silent. In retrospect, it's amazing to consider how that one innocuous decision would transform my life. Later, when I returned home and my reception was restored, I noticed that there were 4 voicemails to match the missed calls. I thought it strange that the calls came back to back, and that the anonymous caller decided to leave a message each time. Suddenly worried that there might have been an emergency, I listened to the voicemails. Now, I'm not going to read this exact quote, as this isn't the dollop.
Okay.
But I'll get as close as I dare. Quote, "Dirty N-word, we're gonna tar and feather your family. I'm gonna kill you, just because you're fucking poor. And you're black, okay? You better not be fucking there, because you might get a bullet in the back of your head. You big whore, you fucking whore. Martin Luther King had a dream. Look at that N-word, he's dead. That N-word is dead. Harriet Tubman, that N-word, she's dead too. Rosa Parks, that fucking N-word, she's dead." Now, Rosa Parks did not die for quite a while, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think she was still alive when this happened. Now, that's pretty bad, and she says she got several voicemails like that because, and this is my contention, racist children are pretty fucking dumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Candace doesn't say that, but it's been my experience. Anyway, moving on. Candace goes on to talk about how terrible this all made her feel and how she cried through the night about it. She mentions how she already hated her time in high school and how obviously this didn't help. She says that she went to school the next day and told her first period class, a very light philosophical course, what had happened. The teacher walked with her to the principal's office and she played the voicemails for her. Immediately, the principal called the police, which is exactly what she was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
They have a responsibility to report that kind of shit.
Yeah, it's not only hate speech, but also death threat.
Yeah. According to Candace and the facts on the matter, the perps were a group of 4 boys, led by a former friend of hers named Zach, 2 others who go unnamed, and a notable boy who at the time was the son of the mayor of the city they all lived in. The mayor would later go on to become the governor of the state of Connecticut. Daniel Malloy. It's not Daniel. It's Danel. Dannel. I looked it up several different ways. I swear to God, that's how it's spelled.
At least I think it's a TV show. At least it's not Danimal.
Right.
I don't...
What? Danimals are a yogurt.
No. Wait. Shit. They are. No, those are Danimals. Or, no.
No, those are Danimals. I can tell you they are.
Okay.
I work for Shipt and I buy them every day for people. Those are Danimals.
I remember hearing in a TV show, though, some guy goes, "I'm the Danimal."
That may have just been a writer throwaway, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Daniel Malloy was the mayor there for 14 years and left the job to become the governor. Apparently he was pretty good at it. Candace goes on to claim, "For the media, the political connection proved irresistible. Within days, my face was splattered across the front page of every newspaper across the state, and I was a repeat story on the evening news. They played the voicemails ad nauseum. Since none of the boys would formally admit to their role, and because a politician's son was involved, the police brought in the FBI to help analyze the voicemails." Now, I have actually been trying to prove this claim for a while. I always start these things in my research by trying to prove the claim being made. I kept coming up empty on this one. Suffice to say that due to the salacious nature of the story, it probably was covered by local media, and Stanford is a college. Stamford is the town.
Okay.
It's not a small town by any means. In 2007, it had a population of anywhere from 118,000 to 122,000 people. More recently, it was recorded to have a population of 135,000, making it the second most populous city in the state of Connecticut. So, the mayor's 14-year-old son being involved in an incident like this would have garnered coverage, but it doesn't seem to have been front-page news. As for it being a repeat story on the evening news, this is likely but also unprovable. I have seen a photo from a story that ran on mic.com, that's mic.com, about the Connecticut chapter of the NAACP that helped the Owens family when all of this occurred. In the photo is a much younger Candace Owens with her father, and the NAACP Connecticut chapter president Scott X. Esdale, and a few reporters from the local news station affiliates. As for them playing the voicemails, I couldn't find anything about it, but I did learn that it is unlikely this happened as well. The FCC imposes major fines for voicemail messages being played on the air without the express permission of parties involved. The fines are not cheap. They're anywhere from $8,000 to $50,000.
Yeah, no news station is going to risk that.
No. Which could also come with a revocation of their license, too.
Yeah.
It can... Yep. Finally, I could find no mention of FBI involvement in the incident. Candace goes on to say that it seemed the entire town seemed split on the verdict of whether or not the incident was real, or the boys named were the ones that did it, or whether or not she did it herself. Candace goes on to say, quote, as the leading bastion of progressivism and civil rights, the NAACP were more than happy to insert themselves into the narrative. They beelined to the front steps of my high school, where they greeted news cameras anxious to receive statements pertaining to the injustices of the investigation. To their credit, they rightfully called out the unusual delay of justice that was more than likely tied to the case's political angle. Administrators from my school were protecting the perpetrators because of the mayor's son, and the NAACP took them to task. What the NAACP did not do, however, was ever actually speak to me. I never had an interview or a meeting with any of my so-called allies who were so eager to speak out about racism but not interested in me, the real person at the center of the story. Now, does any of that, how does that sound to you?
It doesn't, honestly, I mean, most, all right.
Mm-hmm.
What is the NAACP again?
Okay, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain they would have gone and talked to her, considering, well, firstly, victim of the crime in question.
Uh-huh.
She's colored, which is why they got involved.
Right.
So I feel like they would have gone to her at multiple points in the process.
You would think, yeah.
The first point being, do you want our help in pursuing this? Yes?
Oh, it gets so much better.
It's... Yeah. I feel like that should be there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
So, the actual truth. According to the aforementioned Scott X. Isdell, I may be messing his name up, is that the NAACP did not descend unannounced into the fray. They were contacted by Candace Owens' father. Also, they did speak with Candace. All of this is provable in statements from people involved. In a statement from the website Stamford Advocate, Candace says that her father wanted to press charges on the school for the incident and the way the school system dragged its feet on the whole thing, while her mother just wanted to let it all go and hope life returned to normal. But the family did sue the Stamford Board of Education over their handling of the case, and the school system settled quickly, paying the Owens family about 10% of its yearly legal budget to them in a check for $37,500.
Jesus.
They only operated on a budget of $375,000. They got 10% of the legal budget for that year.
Yeah.
Now, the next part of this made me cackle and lose my breath because it's yet another thread in which all these bastards are connected. The Owens family attorney in all of this was none other than Norm Pattis. Yes, Knowledge Fight listeners and Alex Jones Sandy Hook case followers, that Norm Pattis. The one that was fighting for Alex Jones in court and lost him a decision of $1 billion.
Jesus.
Norm Pattis, if you can believe it, used to actually win a case or two. I've lost my shit when I read that the first time. I was like, no fucking way. It's not the same guy. It's got to be like, it has to be. It has to be a coincidence. It is not. It is absolutely not a coincidence. There are like 10 people in the fucking world, I swear to God.
I feel like maybe the reason why he was able to win that case and not Alex Jones's is because there was actual evidence of, at least the voicemails being the evidence.
Yeah, there was actually evidence. Yeah,
and
there was evidence that they dragged their feet. Yeah.
Yeah, there was evidence there that he was able to secure to, get the win.
Yeah.
Whereas Alex Jones, I don't know anything about that court run except for Alex is out a lot of money.
It's so bad. That whole thing is so fucked. Yeah. Now, the next part of this chapter is a little sobering. Candace says, quote, "This soured my perspective on the world early in life. Fundamentally, I began to believe that the world was happening to me, that I was a tragic Shakespearean figure doomed to fail because of the unfortunate circumstances of my childhood. This quite naturally led me down a path of liberating myself from any concept of personal responsibility. I drank, I partied, I got into fights. Everywhere in my life I created chaos because chaos came to falsely represent a state of freedom. I felt freed from rules, freed from regulations, freed from accountability. And because I felt that my life's narrative had been decided for me, I turned to anorexia to reassert control. For 4 years, I restricted how many calories I consumed. The lighter I felt I could make myself physically, the lighter I felt mentally. I felt freed from the weight of my past. But with time, what was supposed to feel like freedom began to feel like bondage. I was pretending that a life with no rules made me feel freer, when in reality it made me feel insecure. I was losing more than pounds. I was losing myself. This was leftism unleashed. Candace goes on to tell a story about speaking with her grandmother for the last time in 2013. Her grandmother listened to her tell stories about her life in New York City and listened to her talk about her job in private equity, and told her, according to Candace, "Candace, I'm afraid you are losing yourself." Now, regarding the private equity job, before we move forward, Candace has mentioned she was a young vice president at a private equity firm in New York City many times, including on her most recent episode that I listened to today.
Yeah.
It's part of her lore on Wikipedia. It comes up in a lot of research on her. What I haven't been able to suss out yet is which firm she worked for, and to my knowledge at present, she's never dropped their name or what she actually did. What I do know is that she did not finish college. And I mentioned that before, but Candace is adamant that she did graduate with a degree in journalism, and according to one of her episodes last week, in her own words... Okay, sorry, we had to hook up my speakers. Anyway, yeah, so... Let me get back to where we were. All right, so... According to one of her episodes last week, in her own words...
Respond to him, but the facts of the matter are, I too also have a degree in journalism. In fact, I have more degrees than Piers Morgan does. I have a bachelor's degree in journalism and in English, and he just has one in journalism. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, which is why I didn't say it. But it is funny. He's a reporter.
Oh, she was doing a terrible British accent. I get it now. Okay.
She's married to a British man. Oh, she goes on with that accent for a bit. I'm not going to play all that shit.
Really?
Yeah. So she says she graduated with 2 degrees. No, she did not. Around the time that Blackout came out, Candace also tried to start a political movement called Blexit, which I have now added to my LibreOffice dictionary so it stops flagging the damn word. Anyway, Blexit was a play on Brexit, and it was Candace's attempt to pull black Americans out of the Democrat Party. This is important because she still has a website up for it, because they're still trying to keep this going as a thing. Anyway, typing Blexit.com into any browser brought up a warning that the site was insecure. I went there anyway and saved the page for offline use, but this gem is copy-paste direct from the Blexit site in the Blexit.com/Candace Owens section. Quote, she attended the University of Rhode Island for 3 years to study journalism before leaving to work in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
There is no mention of a degree anywhere. She gets away with material like this because no one really fact-checks her in media. The demonstrable fact that her audience members on YouTube shot up by several thousand after the Piers Morgan interview highlights, also to me anyway, that professional media still hasn't realized that they shouldn't put people like her on their fucking shows. But it probably gave Piers Morgan a ratings boost, so I expect it to happen again and again and again. Especially if she keeps doing media bait shows like she has this past week, which we will get into next. But first, Candace goes on in this chapter to bemoan how the media handled the story in her whole school racism incident. She attempts to show grace here by all but forgiving the whole thing for happening. Candace further goes on to expound on the idea that being named publicly, the boys involved were forever stained as racists. This may or may not be true, but I didn't bother to look up the names of the other 2 boys that were unmentioned because she only mentions 2 of them by name here. That said, I also didn't run follow-up on them because they aren't the subject of study here. In the last few paragraphs, Candace attempts to explain a difference she sees in liberalism versus leftism. Candace claims that, quote, liberalism is defined as a political philosophy based on liberty and equality before the law. It is an allegiance to a set of principles that guarantee those who follow them a society with more individual freedoms. True liberalism pursues principles like the right to life, right to vote, freedom of speech, etc. When our forefathers wrote right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they meant a right to life, literally. On behalf of Black America, I will make an argument that liberalism has only ever been practiced by conservatives in this country. She goes on to describe leftism thus. Leftism is defined as any political philosophy that seeks to infringe upon individual liberties in its demand for a higher moral good. Leftists concern themselves not with principle, but with some greater morality that must be achieved. The issue with leftism is that moral goodness is, of course, subjective. Not so long ago, white supremacy was deemed the higher moral good, and in its pursuit, leftists infringed upon the rights of Black Americans. Today, economic equality is the established higher moral good, and the left is after, and we will soon unpack just how many liberties have been arrested in its pursuit. I would, of course, push back on this, that white supremacy was never seen as a higher moral good. Even among the worst people that used it and benefited from it, such as Nathan Bedford Forrest, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Robert E. Lee, and others that publicly stated their own distaste for slavery and the political institutions that nonetheless kept it going and found ways to keep it going after the Civil War and emancipation, with things like Jim Crow voting laws, sharecropping, prison labor, no minimum wage floor, and other things I can't even think of right now. Candace is once again showing her less than grade school knowledge of history and praising the founders of America and reading into the statements made on that time on things like the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson, credited with writing it, was a lifelong slave owner that made every excuse to keep owning people while writing screeds about how people needed freedom, because he had a very clear mindset on who deserved it and who never did. Mm-hmm. Candace fails to realize which group he would have put her in without a second thought, because to actually study Jefferson would require her to examine a pillar of her beliefs, and I'm not sure that's something that she can do. Among the last paragraphs of this chapter, Candace says, "Alas, what remains of the doomed union between liberals and leftists exists under the Democrat Party, a political group that champions leftist solutions to the perpetual detriment of Black America. The entire Democrat platform is built upon an everlasting stream of victims versus oppressors, and Black America is their favorite horse to bet on when it comes to jamming through their policies. In the left's oversimplified version of American history, blacks are a permanent underclass who must commit their votes to Democrat politicians for rescuing. Democrats see inherent racism and struggle in nearly everything, thereby destroying nearly all racial progress that has been achieved thus far. The sad truth is that nearly every policy they promote invariably harms Black America. Indeed, there is something about progressive policies that always leads to regressive results for Black America. I will grant her one thing that has been observed by others on the left and center sides of the political spectrum, that the Democrat Party often gets away with doing bare minimum movement for their voters because all they have to do sometimes is just be better than the Republicans or be better than the outright fascists to retain their seats. But in areas where the voting public is willing to protest and make a physical presence known, the politicians do tend to do more. Ours here in Minnesota are a good example. The Democrats have a heavy presence here and it's been well earned. Other states, not so much. But what Candace will fail to mention is that often Democrat policies and social service policies do not fail when they are executed or allowed to be tried. But as anyone familiar with things such as the rollout of Obamacare knows, allowing Republicans and companies to call the shots on the program in the interest of political fairness caused what could have been a good program to get bogged down and become a shell of itself because the Republicans stripped it down hard before it ever became implemented and then have continued to seek the repeal of it in many ways ever since, and that is only one example. Progressive policies on the whole do not hurt Black Americans or others. I would argue that if Candace wants government subsidies to end, then she should ask fuel stations and farmers to give up their subsidies with a straight face. But in both of those cases, those subsidies on the whole probably help more people overall economically. They aren't great for the environment, but we have to pick our battles. To that end, I drive an EV and grow veggies. Anyway, that's the end of chapter 1 of this fucking book.
I'm glad we're done with chapter 1, but that is still a lot. Mainly the
what?
The constant horse beating of the students. Like, I understand that was bad, but
yeah,
I feel like she kept returning to the
well.
Yeah. She kept she started to go out a little bit there, and then she pulled it back to racist event when I was a kid, and then pushed it back out again, and then pulled it back again to racist event when I was a kid, and it was like, this is your center locking point, isn't it? This is the part where you go, okay, I'm starting to lose them, guys. Let me say racism. All right, I got them back again. We're good. Let's go back forward again. Okay, too far. Racism. We love it. Yeah. Sorry, we hate it.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh my God. See, I'm not. Okay. I started working we're in episode 9 right now of our show.
Yeah.
I started working on episode 10 last night.
Okay.
Which puts me in chapter 2 of this fucking book.
Yeah.
And oh my God, all right. I'm pretty sure I covered it in this one, which means we're going to have to get to it later. But she has managed over the last week, plus this week's shows that I've been listening to.
Yeah.
I am back on the train of she's terrifyingly bad. I thought she was just laughably bad.
Yeah.
I'm back on the holy crap, she's terrifyingly bad train.
Okay.
The more I've had to listen to her, the worse it has honestly been.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, you ready for this? I'm going to get into episode... Now, to be fair to everybody here, I had planned to do this as episode 6 through 9, and I'll kind of explain a little bit more of that. We're only really getting through 6 through 7.
Okay.
Because episode 8, as it turns out, I'm going to have to revisit in this week's episode run.
Okay.
We're going to have to visit episode 8 of her show a little bit in episode 10 of ours.
Okay.
Yeah. You will not... That ties into my current working theory of her.
Yeah.
That I have to present next week. I hate it. I hate every bit of it. I hate having to listen to it. She's fucking terrible.
You've brought out the Jewish Italian hand speaking.
yeah. Listeners can't see it, but yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm sitting here holding a microphone in one hand and gesturing with my other. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So this is June 17th to 21st. Candace came out swinging this week. I've only cut clips from and will only be discussing her Monday through Thursday run of June 17 to 21 because on the 22nd she allowed a debate on her show between a pro-peace Jewish man and a pro-genocide Jewish man, and Candace didn't say much. To be fair, when she did, it was on the side of peace. But I am beginning to think it might be for reasons other than her pro-life at all costs stance on the issue. Anyway, she started the show on Monday with this.
All right, guys, happy Monday. And it looks like people are listening to our private conversations again. You know, I'm just talking to you guys like you're my cousins and my friends. And then I look up and the media is very, very mad at me all the time. And I got to tell you, it is getting more intense out there. I think actually it's even going international. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, I'm pretty sure him and his husband Brigitte are going to come for my life because check out this headline all the way from France. Brigitte Macron, la rumeur qui inquiétait l'Élysée. I don't know if I said that good, guys, but what it means, what it translates to is the rumor that worries Élysée. So they are concerned about something, and I can tell you what that something is. All that and more coming up on Candace.
Yes?
She does realize that by doing a podcast and posting it online without a paywall, let's say she had another horrendous, $20 paywall or some shit.
Right.
Even with a paywall, she's posting it up publicly for everyone to listen and give their opinions.
Yeah.
So, of course, people are fucking listening in on their private conversation. It's not private.
No, there's nothing private about this. I don't think she knows what privacy actually is.
Okay.
So, yep, Candace is claiming jokingly that her life is in danger because she won't stop saying that Brigitte Macron is a trans woman. That's the cold open to her show from June 17th, last Monday. Candace goes on to tell a story supposedly from the book Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. Now, anyone familiar with Behind the Bastards is probably aware of the many things the CIA was doing even to itself with LSD experiments, let alone soldiers and others. Candace has only seemed to learn about it from this one book. I have not read the book, but I looked into it a little. The writer is a well-known journalist named Tom O'Neill. For what it's worth, the book is well reviewed, but Candace is doing what Candace does and spends several minutes weaving a story she says is from the book about a CIA experiment. This is over 2 minutes long, but it shows how she sets up her audience.
Guys, so we are talking a lot about psychology lately, and that's making the media pretty angry because they are a part of this sort of psychological simulation. So I'm going to tell you a true story, and it is wild. And I know that if you are reading the book Chaos, that I have been basically saying is required reading at this point, if you're going to listen to this podcast, then you know that our CIA has been up to no good for a very long time. Scary stuff. It's actually a very tough, scary read because you have to come to terms with the fact that our government is evil. Our government has done tremendously evil things. They will continue to do that until we wake up. So true story, the CIA, back in the day, did this experiment where they placed 18 people in a room. 17 of those people were actually CIA agents, and one of them was just an unwitting member of the public. So imagine they pick you, you think that you're going into a room with 17 other people who are from the street just like you, but in reality, those 17 other people are agents, and they are conducting an experiment on you. So the person that was running the experiment showed every single person in the room a picture of a triangle. It was very clearly a picture of a triangle, and he asked every person in the room to simply state what they saw on the picture. Well, despite it clearly being a triangle, all of the agents were instructed to say square. So imagine you're in this room with 17 other people, you think that you're all off the side of the street, and they start going around, and everyone says, oh, what is that? A square, a square. What do you see? A square, a square, a square, a square. Well, by the time it gets to you, and you're the 18th person, you're going, oh, am I crazy? I see a triangle. And guess what that 18th person said? Well, they said square, because they didn't want to be the crazy person in the room. Really think about the implications of that experiment. That is exactly how the media works. They are the agents in the room that are repeating square, 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 until you're supposed to just completely abandon reason and just join them and say, totally, that's a square. That's what I see too, even though you know that's completely not true. And the reality is the majority of people do this today because you don't want to think that you're crazy, and you look back at COVID and you see everybody wearing the masks and 6 feet social distancing and all of this stuff that was so clearly absurd. People fell in line because they just thought, I don't want to be the crazy person. I don't want to be the anti-vaxxer. I don't want to be called insane. I can't think of a greater modern example going on right now of that experiment than the Brigitte Macron story. It is an absurdity. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence. And Emmanuel Macron.
Yeah. So. Then we get into the meat of this episode. Now, I feel the need to say that what follows, and for much of this particular episode on this day, is transphobic and not at all true. I find it offensive. I'm playing it because it needs to be on the record and heard to be understood. Y'all are hearing it once. I had to listen to it multiple fucking times. This is the result, I believe, of Piers Morgan giving her a podium on his show 2 weeks ago, because he questioned her on this, and now she is expounding on it. Anyway, here we go. Candace explaining and then playing the relevant part of that argument.
Is married to a biological male. I know that sounds crazy. And it sounds crazy especially because the mockingbirds in media are just refusing to debunk it. Instead, they're just trying to tell you that, yep, well, you guessed it. It's a square. Well, it's obviously a woman. Don't ask any more questions. Yeah, jogging your memory to Piers Morgan last week, trying to make me say that it was a square. Take a listen. Why don't you go pursue a primary source? Why don't you go find the articles that were written by the French journalists? Because this did not come from me. This came from French journalists.
And while they were working, let me finish the statement, Piers. Okay. While they were working on this piece, the Macrons sent their secret service to interrupt this. This is not a normal thing that you do when somebody's about to publish a lie. You would just say it's ridiculous, publish it, and we'll dispute it. They sent the secret service to intimidate these journalists. They took their phones, they held them, they wanted to know everyone who was working on the piece, and what they uncovered was absolutely fascinating. What he's trying to tell you, this is crazy, this is wacky, why don't you just go pursue a primary source? Well,
I'm not the primary source. It would be very easy to dispute this. All Brigitte Macron would have to do is produce a single photo of her in the first 30 years of her life, or to go on a little walk with her brother, who she alleges that she is.
So, thoughts on this for now?
Well, firstly, if that was meant to be her section of the argument, I just heard her repeating the same things that she's been repeating about Macron's.
Yeah.
Okay, is it Macron's wife or
yes,
is
Macron's wife? Okay.
Yeah. And then
who is Mrs. Macron?
Yeah, Miss Macron. Two things.
Yeah.
One, I don't understand the. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. Before I say this, I love French food.
Oh yeah, the French are great.
Yes.
You've never had escargot. We're gonna have escargot one day. It's gonna blow your fucking mind.
Who would give a shit if the president of their country's wife
if this were true?
If this were true, who would give a shit if Macron's wife is transgender? It's the bloody French.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah. Well, that's. And well, honestly, the Macrons are suing for libel. They did say, now this, what Candace is not telling you, and that I will be telling you, is that this story surfaced 3 years ago during an election. It did not affect the Macrons whatsoever because they were like, that's bullshit, and they moved on with their lives.
Yeah.
There are more elections coming up in France.
Okay. So it's a political...
It's a political hit job.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all it is.
All right.
And it's only gaining notice by international people like Candace.
Who want to...
The French know better.
Yeah.
And the French generally, I don't think they give a shit. I don't think the people in the cities give a shit. I don't think the people in the countries give a shit because they have other shit to deal with.
Yeah, it's like I said, who would really give a shit because it's...
Yeah.
If
it were true, if it were true, I don't think the French people generally would give a shit. They don't seem to have given a shit.
No.
To the point that I haven't seen any articles about them trying to stop the libel case.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But the other thing being Macron's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Where's her? Did she do any
we're going to get into that.
Hunting a primary resources, she kept saying, to prove, because I'm fairly certain that somebody as important as a president's wife, you can usually, look them up and look into them in depth. Also, I doubt a Secret Service would give two shits about a public article being published.
Yeah,
so
that part cannot be backed up with any proof.
Okay.
The story gets more absurd next week.
Okay.
It has been revisited this week.
Oh, okay.
It gets more absurd and dumb.
Next week. Got it.
Yeah. But for now, back into the writing. I wrote 12 fucking pages on this.
Jesus.
Last week was 10. To give you an example. Okay, so the fact is, I looked into this quite a bit. Before we play more clips of this bullshit, I want to pass on that Candace never looked into this beyond tweets and Photoshop articles. She'll explain it herself, but I wanted the audience to know that Brigitte's ex-husband was a banker, and he didn't have a huge public life, but because his ex-wife married Emmanuel Macron, who went on to become the president of France, of course there were many attempts to get his take on everything. But he desired his privacy and mostly managed to keep it until he died in 2019 on Christmas Eve.
No, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. He was cremated, and the memorial was private. Brigitte Macron's brother, who will also be mentioned, runs the family chocolate and macaroon factory.
Ah.
And it is supposed to be one of the best ones in France, and has been active across 5 generations since the 1800s.
Jesus.
Yeah. He also has a very private life and just seems to want to run the business he has been entrusted with, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
There are birth records and every modern thing for Brigitte's 3 adult children, and there are absolutely photos that disprove this entire story that Candace will tell. I just wanted to put that out there before we get into this utter nonsense. Anyway, you were all warned, and here we go.
Not. So that's incredible. He's saying, no, I haven't even looked at the story. I had not pursued a primary source because that's not the task of a mockingbird. He is supposed to just say what the state wants the public to think. And in this case, they just want you to think that it's crazy. Hence, Barry Weiss, formerly of the New York Times, when she tweeted a celebratory tweet about me being fired from the Daily Wire, she actually wrote an entire article. And she tweeted this. Take a look. It says, and this piece doesn't even touch on her truly bat views about Brigitte Macron. That it took the Daily Wire this long to sever ties with Candace Owens is alarming. Oh, there goes another one of the words. This is alarming. This is truly bat insane. Again, psychological. That's just her trying to say to the public, don't even look at that. That is so crazy that I couldn't even take the time to simply debunk it. And it's a very easy thing to debunk. This is the job of the mainstream media. And this is something that you are going to have to tether yourself to. You're going to have to tether yourself to the reality that they are constantly making psychological gains by trying to convince you that crazy is sane and sane is crazy. So let me tell you about this Brigitte Macron story and how I came across it, because like I told Piers Morgan, no, of course, this did not come from me. Why would I just be sitting around as an American citizen being like, I wonder if I could look into a French conspiracy theory? Of course not. I was actually just reading the Daily Mail one day, and I saw a headline about how Emmanuel Macron was absolutely furious.
So, that's where the damage starts, with the story she read in the Daily Mail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everybody's read the Daily Mail.
Have they?
Yeah, you know, the Daily Mail, it's... they sell it at every grocery store these days. Everybody gets the Daily Mail. I read the Daily Mail this morning, it's that sounds like a fake fucking newspaper.
Oh, wait for it. For those unfamiliar, the Daily Mail is a shit rag, or a tabloid if you prefer a more culturally appropriate term. Wikipedia won't allow the use of Daily Mail or the online site as a source. That's how bad it is.
Okay, so it is a real place.
It's a real publisher. But
they don't produce real information.
No, they have won awards. In fact, I think I get into that a little bit here. It has won awards, but it's been around since the late 1800s.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it occasionally got something right. To that end, so did the Enquirer.
Yeah.
When it said things like Michael Jackson was getting married to Lisa Marie Presley. These things occasionally get some shit right.
Yeah. Occasionally.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a bad source on the same level as the Washington Times run by the Mooney cult. It has a similar hard right bias, and given what we know about Candace, it makes sense that she would be reading it and quoting it as a source for a bullshit story.
I honestly thought it was a fake thing, the Daily Mail.
It might as well be.
It sounds fake, like... Oh, God.
Yes, about these rumors. And I was like, what rumors? I haven't even heard about anything. And then I stumbled upon quite a pretty big situation that has been going on in France, in that it has gotten so big that, yes, Macron has been tasked now with going out to the public and trying to dissuade them from believing that his wife, Brigitte Macron, was actually born a man. Now, of course, when I saw the headline, I agreed. I was like, yeah, that is absolutely insane. Let me read this article real quick. And the article stipulated that there was a theory. And immediately, in reading the article, my mockingbird senses came on. I realized that the article itself was also not debunking anything, and this should be a very easy thing to debunk. Rather, they were just doing what Barry Weiss was doing, what Pierce was doing, and just saying it was crazy. Now, in this article, they had only 2 photos embedded as proof that Brigitte Macron ever lived as a woman for the first 30 years of her life. Here are the 2 photos. I'm going to show them to you. Here's the first photo. And they basically were just like, look at cute little Brigitte Macron sitting on her mother's lap. And instantly, I promise you, I hadn't even looked into the primary source of the story. And I said, well, that's weird, because Brigitte looks to me like the person on the far left. That is Brigitte's whole face. I mean, you looking at this? I mean, if you're listening to this in a podcast, do go find it on YouTube thereafter. But I went, no, that actually, the person on the left doesn't look anything like Brigitte. Whatever. Then I looked at photo 2 that they presented, and I went, wait, Brigitte's quite old. This does not look like a photo that is that old. This actually looks like a new photo that was just turned into black and white. Whatever, I put it in the back of my mind, I decided to go pursue the primary source, and I was shocked at what I stumbled upon. You guys, this was not some Reddit conspiracy theory. This was not some people sitting around with tinfoil hats being like, let's just make up a rumor about...
Yeah, so the source she mentions here is of course a far-right French publication known for bullshit. Faits and Documents.
About the First Lady of France. No, far from that. This was a story that was worked on for 3 years by journalists, which was eventually published in a 6-part series in a publication known as Faits et Documents. Xavier Poussard worked on the story. Natasha Ray worked on...
Yeah. And then we get this.
On the story, and they crossed hands with genealogists who worked on this story. So again, no, this was not some random conspiracy theory. This was 3 years of hard work. And what they determined was that Brigitte Macron did not exist for the first 30 years of her life. Listen to what I'm saying to you. There is no proof that this human being existed for 30 years. It's a very easy thing to debunk, guys.
Yes, there is proof. As I've already mentioned, loads of proof. And one of the things that I didn't write down, but I've learned over the last week, was that one of the people that worked on this story was a fucking medium.
Okay, when you say medium...
A spiritual medium.
Okay, that kind of medium.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a spiritual medium.
Yeah, they always have 100% of the 100% of the time they have the answers, you know?
And they hired genealogists to fuck up Brigitte's family tree. Because other people that looked at this were like, no, what were you looking at?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have the official sources right here. Her family is basically chocolate aristocracy, which is very close to being royalty.
Yeah.
You know, like, the French do not fuck around with their chocolate.
They don't fuck with their chocolate, their wine, or their cheese.
God, French wine. God, I love French wine. Okay, so everything I found about the family's chocolate factory in Amiens is that it is like considered the 4th best French chocolate in the world.
Okay.
Like, considering how much there is.
Mm-hmm.
I want to book a flight to go get this fucking chocolate. It's supposed to be some of the best. Like, apparently their recipes have remained unchanged, and they even managed to last. They were so beloved, they lasted during the wars. The Germans let them keep working. Like, that's like Cronenberg levels of greatness.
Yeah.
Where even Germany's like, you can keep doing.
Yeah.
You can keep doing. You know? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that... what the fuck?
Yeah. So, I don't want to spend any more time on this because it's incredibly wrong, and Candace goes on for the next 8 minutes, and I won't play any of that. It's just her making a rambling lie about how journalists look into this, and how they pestered the family, and how, according to Candace, there is no proof that Brigitte is a cis woman. And then we get this. Candace talking about how Mrs. Macron's first husband couldn't be found or located by the media in France, which is bullshit.
I couldn't find him. Nope, without a trace. Could not find this man anywhere. They were like, hey, yeah, where's your ex-husband? And they kept going, oh, no, he's extremely private. He's extremely private. And then one day to phone, Brigitte's daughter just randomly announces, as journalists began going, oh, this is really weird. Where is your dad? That he died and they chose to cremate him in a private ceremony. Don't ask any questions. Yep, dead. Can't find a trace of him. Can't find proof that he ever existed.
Bullshit. The man died on Christmas Eve 2019, and there are records stating such. Candace follows with this ramble.
But he's now dead and don't ask any questions. You guys, this is just, well, to put it like Barry Weiss, bat insane. It's so easy for someone to just produce a shred of evidence that this individual existed for the first 30 years of her life. Don't let them make you think that you're the crazy one, okay? It's a triangle, my friends. It is not a square. You have a lesson in all of this is that the state, through decades of psychological research, institutes that were dedicated to seeing how us, the public, the general public, would respond to certain things, they were able to determine that you are much more likely to believe a big lie rather than a small one. Because your brain just goes, oh, there's no way this could be a lie. It's so big. It's like when you hear those stories and you're like, how did this woman not know that her husband had an entire family? Well, because you would think you're crazy to believe that your husband was traveling and started an entire family. The lie is so big that you're actually not likely to believe it. So when the state lies, they lie big. And you've got to be willing to be the person in the room. You got to be willing to be like me, because I'm telling you, if the CIA had me in that room, I would be like, are you guys crazy? It's a freaking triangle. You guys need to get your heads checked. Why are you all saying square? You got to be bold like that, you guys. Trust your gut. Your gut is God-given. And on that note, you guys, I am very excited for the summer because I am making sure that I continue to stay consistent in my routines, especially my prayer routines. A great way for me to do that is with Hallow, my favorite prayer app. It is the #1
Yep, she goes right into
Catholic app in the world. It is an amazing app for any Christian that is looking to dive deeper into their prayer life. And let me tell you, everyone needs to start praying because these are some scary times. Hallow has thousands of prayers, meditations, and music, including new contemplative and contemporary Christian radio that I can listen to anywhere, anytime. This summer, Hallow has a number of powerful prayer challenges and a scripture series that's coming up with biblical scholar Jeff Cavins, Jonathan Rumi from The Chosen, and even Jim Caviezel from The Sound of Freedom and Passion of the Christ. So do not abandon your prayer habits this summer. Maintain your peace and deepen your relationship with God on Hallow. Download Hallow for 3 months for free at hallow.com.
Yeah. So that's right. You too can pray along with the man that played Jesus in a movie and was struck by lightning and cooked his mind on QAnon stuff. as well as so many other bad and terrible allegations, such as him being a sex pest. The Hallow app allows for 3 months when you use Candace's discount code or link. Normally, the app is $9.99 per month for the premium tier that she's pushing, or $119 for a family of up to 6 to share an account, or free with far less features. Go ahead. Is it too much for you?
The Southern, and I know it's the wrong type because she said it's for Catholics, but the Southern Baptist in my head just is doing the praise Jesus. Okay, I was gonna say why family of 6, and then I remembered it's Catholics.
Yeah.
I've gotten used to
That's mom, dad, and 4 crotch fruits.
Yep. 4. I'm surprised it's not set for a family of 8 because I've met a family of 8 Catholics before.
Yeah.
And at least 2 of them are like, I don't want to.
Yeah. It's usually the 2 oldest that have raised the 6 younger ones.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So, did she really? Did she really say?
Keep going. Yeah.
Was that Mel Gibson?
What?
Did she say Mel Gibson?
I don't know.
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But Mel Gibson directed The Passion of the Christ.
Okay.
That Jim Caviezel was in. You might
Jim
have heard
Caviezel. Okay. See, I heard my brain skipped over Jim Caviezel. And I just heard Passion of the Christ, and I'm like, fucking Mel Gibson. You telling me I can pray with now here's freedom there?
Now here's the thing. Mel Gibson has, I think he bankrolled partially Jim Caviezel's last movie with Angel Studios.
Okay.
Which was called Sound of Freedom? Yes. Okay, I blanked on it because they have another movie. They have another movie that has Sound of as part of the title.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wait, which one? Yeah. Here's the fucky thing, right? Okay. So Sound of Freedom. The QAnon Anonymous people did wonderful reviews on that movie. It's batshit terrible.
Yeah.
But the new one they have that she's unfortunately pushing sounds decent. Like, I don't want to go pay to see it. Mm-hmm. But if someone gave me a ticket, I might check it out. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds like the kind of drama that I would maybe watch.
Yeah.
But with her pushing it so hard, I'm not going to pay for it.
No.
I can't do that. You know?
God. Also, that's kind of a weird thing to roll into. At first, you're like, you're bashing the French president for his wife being supposedly a transgender.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh yeah, and I'm going to be keeping up with my prayer challenges, which reminds me, Halo. And what the fuck is a prayer challenge? Like,
I don't know.
Like, and you put your hands together and just go, I'm on, while you're like jumping through tire hoops or some shit. Like,
if it was, that'd be awesome.
I mean, hell, if it's a fitness program, I'd give it a shot. Just
if it's like what the military tells people, like the reason why like soldiers chant, fucked up songs when they march.
Yeah.
Is because it's supposed to like help with their breathing or whatever the fuck. Yeah. I've heard all kinds of reasons for this from ex-military people. If it was something like that, if it's like, do this Gregorian chant while you like run through this obstacle course. All right, that's an added challenge.
Yeah.
Respect if you can do it.
Now put on heavy plate armor and then do it. Yeah. Which is the next step, because if you're going to do a
I feel
crusade,
like that's the you have a point. Yeah, if you're going to do a crusade, you might as well train for it.
Yeah.
If Catholics are coming back in force, you might as well be on the front lines. Yeah. I mean, so when Candace goes into ad reads like that, I sometimes really wonder if the ad read buildup was the entire purpose of the story. But in this case, I think it was just convenient, because the story about Mrs. Macron seems to be Candace's version of gay frogs.
Sorry, I forgot about gay frogs. I don't know how I could forget about
I laughed when I wrote
gay
it.
frogs.
I laughed when I wrote it. It's fine. But this is the thing I think that will get the most traction for her brand. And just like gay frogs, it's based on flimsy evidence that is easily defeated. Candace quickly goes into another build-up for another ad read, this time for a movie she's pushing heavily this week. Before getting into that, she claims that the episode of the Daily Wire Candace Owens show where she spoke about Mrs. Macron was something that her viewers couldn't locate, so she decided to just go through it all again on her new show. Now, a cursory search of her old channel on YouTube brought up nothing, and at this point, I assume the Daily Wire people pulled the channel. But a glance at this week's current titles tells me that yes, this story is Candace's new flagship. So we'll be getting more into that next week. In the interest of time on these things, I'm not going to play the ad Candace does for a new movie from the Sound of Freedom studio, Angel Studios. I'll briefly go over it, though, since Candace plugs it every fucking day this week.
Okay, so we are probably going to end up listening to it.
Yeah, if she actually plays a real trailer, like... here's the fucked up thing. On her show, right, she says, here's a clip from the actual movie. And then what you hear is a fucking trailer. Like, it's obviously a trailer.
Okay.
And then when she says, here's a trailer, there's like a 10-second clip. So I don't know if it's her crew that sucks, because it seems like you could label them as like trailer and not trailer.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of like how you have all of the fucking clips that you've taken of her show and like labeled all of them and you even have it here in your
in the script, yes,
labeled as
Piers fucking Morgan,
no MP3,
proof,
that sort of shit.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the problem with the Brits?
What?
She keeps getting angry at Brits and Jews.
Oh. Here's the thing with the Brits. She's married to one.
The poor man.
They have 3 children that they've had in the last 3 years.
That's a child a year.
They're doing their Catholic duty, sir.
They're one more away from hitting the
family mark. Well, they're one more away from hitting the family mark. I mean, God forbid there's a 5th kid. He'll have to get his own.
They're hitting the minimum requirement is what it is.
Yeah.
They want to go for the maximum. They got to keep going until they die, I suppose.
Well, until one of them dies, and usually it's the wife in the equation, I believe.
Is it? Usually?
Well, yeah. Dude, childbirth just takes so much out of a woman.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like you see some of these like, I mean, like, now that being said, I have seen like some Irish families that are like, 10 kids deep and the mom can like throw a hay bale of fucking 20 yards and shit.
Yeah.
Like some people are just not affected by it whatsoever. But yeah, so I'll briefly go over it though, since Candace plugs it every day this week. It's called Sound of Hope. See, that's where it is based on a true story about a town in Texas called Possum Trot. Now, the first time I heard that, I had to look it up. I was like, there's no way this town is called Possum Trot. It is. It is. Okay. It's a real town that exists today. You could drive there.
All right.
Where a congregation from a local church adopted 77 kids into 22 families from the local adoption system. And it took place mostly between 1998 to 2000. Candace says she was sent an advance copy to screen, and she has been plugging the movie since. If the story is true, it actually sounds okay. But Angel Studios has a questionable past with Sound of Freedom, so we'll see. Candace wraps the show with reading user comments from her last set of shows, and this is something she does regularly. Consider it the taking calls bit that Alex Jones or Sean Hannity might do on their shows, except she really gets to curate it to people blowing her up with compliments. I haven't heard her read a single crass comment yet, and I can tell you that I have seen several on her videos.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, I'm not going to visit the comment reads unless they are extraordinary. That wraps up episode 6 of her show, but now we get into episode 7, which is somehow more nuts. The title is Everything We Learned About World War II is a Lie.
Oh boy, this is going to be a good one. I've unfortunately talked to, and I stopped playing D&D with this guy promptly. Mm-hmm. A World War I, II, Vietnam, Korea, and Twin Towers denier.
Okay.
He didn't believe that any of that time actually happened. And that Auschwitz was never a thing, and that
oh my God,
your grandparents should never have been scared of leaving Germany.
Yeah. Oh, that's a special kind of stupid.
Mm-hmm. I really wish he was joking.
Candace is almost there. She's almost there.
God.
So, that's a provocative title, and as usual, it's way off. Candace starts the cold open discussing the Boston Celtics. Is it Celtics or Celtics? I never know, and I don't care. Winning the NBA championship this year, and how great it is that their coach is a Catholic that prayed the rosary before the final game. She goes into claiming that the powers that be are trying to walk us all into World War III, and then claims that America's trip into World War II was filled with lies and propaganda. The opening theme plays, and then we get...
So my childhood trauma is World War II. It's yours too. Trust me. You may not believe it, but it is definitively your trauma as well. It might be difficult to comprehend this, you guys, but the purpose of public education is, in fact, indoctrination. That is the whole purpose of it. It's weird because we sit in our classrooms as Americans and rah, rah, rah. We could never be like the East, and there were Stalin youth and there was Hitler youth, and we're nothing like that. We're so free. Nope. We've actually employed the exact same tactics as Stalin and as Hitler youth. And I started realizing that when I happened upon a book. You guys know I'm a major fan of Thomas Sowell. The book was entitled Inside the American Education System. I definitely recommend that you read it. And in the book, he discusses how the American school system actually intentionally employed tried and true Soviet tactics to shock children into compliance. It's really fascinating stuff. I'll give you an example of what he's talking about. He's referring to sex education in that particular portion of the book. And he's talking about how they knew that if they showed children certain images at a certain age, they would be so shocked that they would comply, right? So what you had here in the 1960s was a bunch of children who were graduating with their virginity intact. They were listening to their parents when it came to quote unquote sex education.
Bullshit.
And then that radically transformed after 10 years of quote unquote public school sex education. And suddenly you got children agreeing to take birth control pills. Planned Parenthood got into the classroom. They were showing them these videos as an example of a woman giving birth. Imagine you're a kid and you've never even had sex, and suddenly you're being shown a video of a woman screaming as she's giving birth. It terrifies you. Into what sort of compliance? It terrifies you to say, okay, well, I am definitively never wanting to get a woman pregnant. If you're a woman, you're going, I don't want to ever give birth. Let me take all of these birth control pills. Anyways, parking that aside.
Thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So I was homeschooled from 3rd grade forward. Yes.
Right.
So I never really had to go through the sex education program.
Right.
But also, and okay, just so I'm correct, she's Catholic, right?
She is currently Catholic.
Okay.
She did not grow up Catholic.
Okay, see, because, okay, birth control shouldn't be forced on somebody ever.
No.
Because that can cause irreparable damage to the body and all that.
Right.
Fucks with the hormones. But if somebody goes, I kind of want to have sex, but I would like to be protected, then yes, they should be on birth control. Mm-hmm. Because not everybody is a Catholic that wants to pump out 5 children.
Yeah.
In 5 years.
Yeah.
So, that being said, I really, oh man. What does okay.
Go ahead.
What does the birth control situation have anything to do with World War II and the Soviets? Also, the results of oh yeah, Mom, Dad, I'm definitely not fucking Jenny, are the same lie that every hormonal teenager that's having sex will push to go, yeah, no, I'm not having sex, Ma and Pop, when in fact that barn hay bale's seen more use from, previous nights out than the cows have eaten it. I don't know why I'm using farmer references for this, but it makes the most sense.
I mean, people from the city, they have a little tryst out in the barn, Farmer John's place. I mean,
Okay, so yeah, it's still...
They might have to wait in line behind Jenny and Farmer John's youngest, but,
Yeah. You get the point there.
Yeah, you get the point. I mean, maybe some of the young males in town are using it.
Yeah.
There's hockey and football teams that are down with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. Yeah.
Maybe
whatever.
Some of the chicks are using it too.
It's a wild world.
Maybe Jenny and Betty decided they wanted to be curious about things.
Yeah.
But also...
Get that shit figured out before you go to college.
The other thing on top of it, because if you do it while you're in college, you might fuck up your life.
Yeah.
Maybe. But... and then the mention of public sex ed program being less effective than keeping it at home and telling.
Yeah.
The thing about that is if it's caused more, prevention of birth, that's a kind of a good thing.
You would think so. But remember, the Catholic rule is to
6 children. Yeah.
Well, is to produce children in a marriage.
Yeah.
But to be fair to Catholic listeners, possibly.
Yeah.
That's not, that's the simplest reading of it.
Yeah.
But for someone like Candace, who only does simple reads, that is the rule.
Yeah. Then if it has prevented births, honestly, I'd say that's a success if that's what the users of the protection are aiming for.
Yeah.
Is to reduce.
And to have, say, someone like Candace will scream about bodily autonomy all day long.
Mm-hmm.
But God forbid that you want bodily autonomy for yourself.
Yeah.
God forbid that a couple would use both a condom and the birth control pill to go have fun.
Yeah. And a word that isn't used as often, but is still a thing, a fondom.
What the fuck? What the fuck is that?
I don't know if they're still in protection, but there used to be female condoms.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've heard of this.
Yeah.
I have never bought one for someone, nor have I seen them. But I have heard of this.
Yeah.
You're not entirely wrong. I'm sure a listener will be like, yo, this is what it is, and provide it on Reddit, and I'll be like, oh, well,
thank you.
You get credit next week.
But if it's done what the users have wanted it to do, which is prevent a kid, then of course they're having more sex or being more open about, me and Jenny have been hooking up in Farmer John's shed.
After his sons are done.
Yeah, after his sons are done, we let them have their fun.
It's their family shed. We let them do the thing with whoever.
Yeah, we don't care.
Yeah.
And
we're not going in there for a barn orgy, for fuck's sake. We want to have it to ourselves and the cows. We're not going to kick them out of their house.
Of course they're probably being more honest about it because they're like, look, it's okay. We're
being
using
safe.
protection.
Yeah.
So of course more people are admitting to, we're having sex because people are starting to not give as much of a shit. Like, oh, dude, I don't want to know who you fucking, just keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
And also, they're fucking using protection. If they want to go, hey, I'm fucking so-and-so, okay, I got protection, that's their own prerogative. Right. I personally don't want to know who they're fucking with or without protection. Right. But
I saw a meme recently, and they pointed out that, like, if a couple says to you, we're trying for a baby, what they're really saying is, we're raw dogging so much. So let's push back on this first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sex ed started in American schools around 1912.
Okay.
It limped along in various forms for several decades, from grade schools, military units, and colleges, until the 1980s when the AIDS crisis pushed the necessity of it to the front. The birth control pill came along in 1960, with the FDA saying it was okay to be used as a contraceptive, and by 1965, 5 years later, about 40% of married women in America were on it. The further away someone was from the cities, the less likely they were to have access to sex ed courses or even a gynecologist. But news of the pill spread quickly, and many married women found it to be a positive addition to their lives, allowing them to control when or if they would get pregnant. Even if a woman was a stay-at-home wife, a young couple might not want kids right away, and this allowed them to put it off as long as they needed to do so and still have a loving environment at home. Candace also mentioned the incorrect title of the Sowell book, and part of me thinks it is to throw people off. Because she said the title is, and go look it up, but if they went looking, well, the name of the book is Inside American Education.
Yeah.
Sowell is, if you couldn't tell, a conservative-leaning critic of American education. He is actually a respected scholar, even if his views are problematic and often taken out of context to an extreme. I certainly don't agree with his views, as his critiques are often spoken without solutions. I suspect he doesn't have solutions, since the most obvious solution to fixing problems in education is to give the schools more money to do more things and empower the teachers to do their jobs in ways that work for them and their students. But no. Sowell doesn't often say the simple truths in his books that I've spent time reading. He instead talks shit and leaves it to the reader. Woof. Anyway, Candace goes on to say some almost sensible things with a sensible clip from an unlikely source.
It got me thinking about other forms of shock treatment in the classroom. And I don't think there's any greater example of that than World War II. I mean, think about the way that you react now to the concept of World War II still, many years after your public school training. We have an almost visceral response that has been embedded in us, even regarding something like German accents. I realize this. Every movie that I watched growing up, every time you talk about Germans in the classroom, they are the bad guys. Just a German accent. Oh my God, this man must be evil. He has an accent like Adolf Hitler. Yeah, that is what they are embedding into you. Anything to defeat the Nazis. Don't even question it. Doesn't matter what we have to do. Even if we have to commit war crimes, if we have to kill civilians, as long as we defeat the Nazis, it's fine. As long as we never have to hear a German accent, it's fine. Yeah, that is kind of what I have recognized about my public school training. And if you need more proof of that, look no further than the bizarre public defense that people make regarding dropping atomic bombs. Yes, incinerating hundreds of thousands of human beings. And people will defend it just like that. Recently, Tucker appeared on Joe Rogan. I've been showing clips of that. It was a phenomenal conversation. You should go pursue it in its entirety. But he begins talking about dropping atom bombs and says something that I think is quite sensible. Take a listen.
On the right, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
Right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Yeah.
If you can't, well, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings. Like, no, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil. Like, it's not a tough one, right? It's not a hard call for you. It's not a hard call for me.
No, I don't know the full context of that clip, but I can agree that dropping nukes is tantamount to a war crime. It's questionable whether America ever needed to do it, and it did set the stage for the nuclear arms race that followed. That all said, it was done decades ago. It became a subject of horror for many people for many years, and continues to this day to be a source of dread because so many countries have nuclear stockpiles, and many nukes have gone missing or are unaccounted for over the decades. That said, Candace then claims that the media at large freaked out over Tucker Carlson saying that nuclear weapons were bad. And as an example, she reads a single tweet, not crediting the writer with the name on audio.
Okay. Thing about the nuclear bombs and being a war crime. By all technicality, it is nowadays considered a war crime. As a prime example, and this is the only reason why I know is because more recently in Ukraine, when the cluster bombs were dropped, cluster bombs are not technically a war crime unless you hit civilians. Now, what happened there was they dropped the cluster bombs, it blew up, killed civilians, that's a war crime. If they had warned the city before they dropped the cluster bombs, like they have to give them like a day or two notice, enough time to evacuate civilians, it's not a war crime if somebody gets hurt. Now, I can't remember all that well, but did we ever warn anybody about the nuclear bombs, or did we just...
I think that leaflets were dropped. Okay. If I remember, leaflets were dropped, but it wasn't clear. And from one thing that I read, leaflets were dropped like the day after the bombs. And it wasn't clear. I mean, how do you tell a nation of people that we're going to drop a finger of God on you? And have them believe it. It could have just been seen as propaganda.
Which we were dropping a lot of that
propaganda.
That.
So, it's, I've read different conflicting accounts over the years, so I don't want to say yes or no.
But for that, the use of a nuclear bomb is a war crime unless, which seems like a weird thing to say, unless you warn the people before you drop it.
I mean,
and, if you're gonna drop one, you're not gonna warn anyone.
The shock is the point. I mean, so moving on. So she read a single tweet, not crediting the writer with the name on audio. She goes on to say something I found offensive, and I think it says something about the self-dislike she might have for herself.
He's aspiring. It's like the Olympics of being a psychopath. He's winning all the awards. She's like, wasn't necessary, but it was good. Like, it was a thing that I would say was a good thing to have happened, just incinerating human life. And that he's not the only person that believes that, because like I said, we have all been propagandized into believing that we had to kill 200,000 civilians in order, as they told us in school, to save lives. Now that I'm older, I'm like, what? That's literally me to my husband when I buy a dress and I tell him that I saved money. I'm like, look, honey, I bought this dress for $150. There was a 25% discount. It was on sale, so I saved money. Of course, there's not a single shred of evidence to substantiate my claim, but my husband tells me, like, hey, yeah, that's pretty illogical. And then he hits me with the fact that no money was saved at all. In fact, what happened was I spent $150. The reality is I've just been propagandized by the sale signs. Says it's on sale, says it's 25% off. And so I was brainwashed into believing that I was saving money by spending money. And that's basically what's been going on when you look at the World War II propaganda. It's like we're just girl mathing hard. Here are the facts which are hiding in...
Yep. She said girl mathing. To describe buying a dress on sale as being in relation to Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Okay. I feel like she could have had a better example. Also, and I hate to give advice and tips here, but that I feel like she could have done an ad roll with that and like rolled it into, but if you want to actually save money, here's my link to Bumble or something like that,
Well, one of her sponsors is a tax service.
See, I'm saying she could have ad rolled right into that.
Well,
did she actually?
No.
Well, fuck.
No. Yeah, I know, right?
But also the using a dress as the figurative speech of spending 200,000 lives.
Yeah.
Which I'm fairly certain the death count was actually more than that.
Yeah, it was, and I think it was more than that from people that died of radiation poisoning in various forms.
Oh yeah.
But the immediate death toll was something like 200,000 from the bombs. Okay. Yeah. Now, I would say Candace could have easily used the line of reasoning that she was going to buy the dress anyway, but it was on sale, so money was saved.
Yeah.
Which can also lead into the nuclear bomb logic, being that many people or more would have died anyway, so we just shorten the time and manpower and losses on our side to do it, which is, in fact, one of many reasons I've heard over the course of my life about this. But it doesn't shock me that if this story about her home life is true, then her husband is exercising the same level of overall pettiness that I have seen from people in his social strata. Candace is not poor, and she married into old wealth. I have worked for old wealth families, and they are notoriously cheap on a scale that often blew my fucking mind. It still does in my current job. So her husband giving her grief over what should be seen as a modest price for a dress isn't shocking. It just confirms my mindset about people in his social strata. Moving on, Candace mentions more of the mindset that dropping the bombs may not have been needed, but was done to prove American superiority. Yes?
I bought a full, dress shirt, dress pants, dress shoes, full thing for my interview coming up.
Yeah.
And I was at the thing, and the lady at the counter was like, "Hey, would you like to save 25% on this?" And I went, "Shit, yeah."
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm going to buy this shit anyway. And I was going to go, no, it's good. And she was like, it's a free service. And I was, shit, all right, yeah, I'll save 25% on my fucking suit. Why not?
Yeah.
And that just, oh my Christ.
Yeah. And you had to give up an email address or some shit?
The email address and a phone number. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I needed to give.
When they text you, you can just reply stop. And they have to stop.
Yeah.
An email, you probably don't even check the shit.
No, actually, I just had to recently clear out my Gmail because it was overloaded.
Right. And speaking of email, folks, you can email him now. I set that up.
Yeah. See, that's how you roll into something.
Yeah.
God.
See? It seems so easy, doesn't it? So, yeah. Moving on, Candace mentions more of the mindset that dropping the bombs may not have been needed, but was done to prove American superiority. Again, this is debatable and outside the scope of this podcast. Candace goes on finally to go to the setup for this episode.
That we had to join the war because we had to free the Jews from concentration camps. And yet, what is not told to us is that we also then allowed Stalin to continue those concentration camps. We locked arms with a villain to take down a villain. We allowed Stalin to continue the mass murder of Christians, which had been going on for a long time, obviously. The Bolshevik Revolution, which took place before he was in power, right? What happened under Lenin? The massacre of Christians, the creation of concentration camps, the Gulag system. There's Christians being mass drowned in barges. So if this was about preventing an ethnic cleansing, if that really is the story of World War II that we are taught in our classrooms, we had to prevent this ethnic cleansing, which in my view, by the way, is always an admirable goal. Why were we never taught that the good guys, being us, then committed an ethnic cleansing immediately thereafter?
Go ahead. I have script, but you go ahead.
First off, there's been several. Did she never actually listen in her history class?
No,
because even in my short time in public school from first grade to third grade in the hick town we lived in, they taught us that, hey, Americans have done ethnic cleansing before.
Yeah,
I mean, several Indian tribes for starters.
Yep.
Not even touching any of the other shit we've done.
Yeah.
We started the concentration camps, unfortunately.
Yep.
And so we have that, for one. We have that ethnic cleansing on our bloody hands.
Yeah.
And then moving forward, and maybe it was just the southern hick town I grew up in, but, she also grew up in a Southern Hicktown, right?
No.
No?
She grew up in, remember, Connecticut.
Oh, right, Connecticut. God. Connecticut.
She grew up 35 miles from New York City.
Okay. My bad on that one. I forgot that
Within driving distance of Washington fucking D.C.
Okay. All right. Which, once again, I'd hope that her schooling system, which she clearly didn't attend very well, considering she bounced out of college. I know I've never gone to college, but...
Yeah.
Anyways, Stalin is painted as a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yes, we had help from the Russians. Yeah, everybody had help from the Russians in both World War I and II.
Yeah.
We had help from the Russians because even the Russians looked at Germany and went, okay, we know we're bad, but we're not as bad as that.
Yeah.
We should deal with that, and then we deal with ourselves.
Right. I mean, basically, yes.
Stalin and the Soviet Union became enemies of us once the Germans weren't the problem.
Yeah.
Because, yes, the Soviets were doing their own concentration camps, and that was all horrible.
Yeah.
But they weren't going across the west side of fucking Europe, slaughtering their way through growing Russia.
Generally, no.
Generally,
I mean, there was everything that happened in post-World War II where they got all these countries added into the Soviet bloc. And, we don't have the time to get into any of that, of course. But, yeah, well, what kills me about her, I can't even call it basic bitch understanding of all of this, is that, yeah, we started the concentration camps that Germany looked at and was... that Hitler's Germany. Let's paint this to who it belongs to.
Hitler's Germany.
Modern Germany would not do this shit.
No.
But Hitler's
Pre-Hitler Germany wouldn't either.
Yeah, well, that's
fair enough.
I don't want to lay that on the Weimar Republic, but or on the Kaiser. But so anyway, they looked at what America had been doing with the natives and said that it looked cool. Like this was never good. So it is true that Stalin and Lenin, prior to him, did start a campaign of terror and death in the USSR among every religious group, but it wasn't just Christians. And during Lenin's term, Russia had tens of thousands of churches.
Yeah.
Like, Lenin didn't really fuck with the religious class that much.
Yeah.
Stalin did after the war. Like, before the war, sure. But definitely after the war. He was trying to consolidate power like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
The efforts tapered off during World War II, but evidence exists that they didn't stop there. Anyway, this is not an ethnic cleansing. It is religious persecution. But Candace seems to think otherwise, obviously, because Christians were involved.
Well, yeah.
Because Orthodox Russian Christians were involved.
Which... Christians aren't correct me if I'm wrong, but Christians aren't a race.
They're not an ethnicity. No.
They aren't
not
an
generally.
ethnicity.
No.
They are there is no place that is Christiania or something. That was a mouthful that I just came up with.
Well said.
There's no Christiania in which the Christians hailed from before Jesus came along. I always want to say Jesus with that Southern Baptist voice.
I prefer Jeebus.
Jeebus.
I prefer Jeebus there. Yeah.
Yeah.
God. No, well, it's like, like, I'm a Buddhist. Buddhism is not an ethnic group. Now, even if you're like, oh, I study Tibetan Buddhism. Okay. That's a religion.
Yeah.
Zen Buddhism is a religion. Fucking Taoism is a religion. You can be a, Ukrainian Taoist if you want to. Like, these are religions. It's not an ethnic cleansing. God. She goes on to mention that America was somehow responsible for events that happened in Europe to the Germans post-World War II. She goes on to mention that she watched a documentary.
As it was casually brought up to me by a priest in London. He said, Americans don't know anything. It's you guys are just so severely propagandized. You know nothing about what's happened in wars. You know nothing about the war crimes that were committed even by the West. And he shared with me this documentary entitled The Savage Peace. And I want to show you guys a little bit of that right now. Take a listen.
Local Germans are forced to confront the horrors of the Third Reich. A lampshade made of human skin, human organs in jars, and half a severed head. Notions of collective guilt and punishment for such atrocities meant that few were prepared to contemplate the idea of Germans as victims, especially in countries that had borne the brunt of Nazi atrocities.
So, in case you're not following what happened there, following the war, they had tables that were laying out in villages, and they showed them severed heads, and they showed them people that were killed and put their heads in jars and said, look, this is what the Nazis did. So don't feel bad about what we're about to do to Germans next. Essentially, they effectively propagandized people in local villages to give them permission to mass murder innocent civilians and innocent children, and that's what they did. Which is why after watching this documentary, I tweeted this: Americans know nothing about real history. Did you know that 12 million Germans were ethnically cleansed after World War II? Did you know 500,000 of them were murdered for the crime of speaking German, that children were lined up and shot? Well over 2 million women and children were raped at the end of the war. Many of them died or killed themselves as a result. In Czechoslovakia, they lined German civilians up, many of whom had lived there for centuries, and ran over their legs with trucks. They forced them to dig their own graves. Not all of them were German. Some of them just spoke German. 12 million German civilians were expelled across Eastern Europe, forced stripped of their homes and property and citizenry for the crime of speaking German. Hundreds of thousands of them starved to death. This ethnic expulsion was the largest in human history, and yet you've never heard about it. Why? That's a question I have for you. Why had we never heard about it? Well, because then it becomes harder for us to consider what actually went on. What was the true purpose for us getting involved in World War II if we were going to commit the very same crimes? Ethnically cleanse people, put them into concentration camps, kill them, kill their children, line them up and shoot them. It's not good. I'll ask you another question. Why are they almost more controlling over the World War II narrative today than they were many years ago?
So there's a lot to unpack. I didn't watch this documentary, but this is the kind of gish gallop she runs on a regular. Now, before I get into this, Candace mentions in a clip that I forgot to cut that German-speaking Austrians were also rounded up. Now, tell me, do you know what the language of Austria is? Take a guess.
The Deutsch, yeah?
Yeah. It's German. Yeah. You don't round up, if you're rounding up German-speaking Austrians, you're rounding up the whole fucking country. Yeah, that didn't happen. I'm going to go that far. That didn't fucking happen.
While the Austrians, okay, as far as I can remember, and I'm probably remembering incorrectly, so do correct me if I'm wrong, whether it's you or listener, Austrians and Germans were a separate people at one point in time, but they collectively speak the same language, correct?
They share a border. Yeah.
It's like I've talked to this old lady that was a French teacher for Germany.
Yeah.
And she lived on the border of France and Germany. And so she had to, teach French. She had to teach German to French students.
Yeah.
But she also was already fluent in French because she grew up on the border of Germany and France.
Yeah.
When you grow up on the border of a country, you tend to educate yourself on the other language because you get people that spill over. Like, if you live in Texas, you're more likely to know Spanish the further south in Texas you are because you have to deal with the spillover. So you're like, okay, I can speak Spanish. You know, that's just what you do to compensate.
The same thing in like California or, in Florida, we had a bunch of Spanish speaking folks.
Yeah.
Like there's just things that you pick up too, just from exposure. But there are several points to unpack here. Number one, this happened in Europe and not America.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the biggest one.
Yeah, because she's saying it was us taking part in it.
Our side, us. No. It happened post World War II, not during the war.
Yeah. By the Soviets, if memory is serving.
Well, the Soviets and the other countries.
Yeah.
Number 3, the actual number of expulsions and deaths combined is in the millions, but it isn't 12 million. I feel like she's using 12 million there because the generally accepted figure on how many Jews were killed in the Holocaust is 6 million.
Yeah.
So, if you have to blow up your side, why not blow it up by 2?
Yeah.
Which, if they were innocent of war crimes or supporting Nazi causes, still isn't good. I'm sure there were some legit innocent people in there, but I also would think that people in a small village or community that had Nazi holdovers were not exactly in a forgiving mindset if they suffered during the Reich or the occupation.
Yeah.
I'm not excusing anything that was done, but I understand.
Mm-hmm. Also, she mentions the starving portion.
Yeah.
That was most of Europe after the war because the
Nazis burned their fucking farms.
Yeah, the Nazis burned the farms, and
sometimes the people themselves burned the farms to starve out the Nazi occupiers.
Yeah. So whether it was the Nazis or the Allies, also the farmlands got royally fucked up. I mean, there's some farmland that's still unusable because it's still full of landmines.
Possibly, yeah. And there's also what was it? Your brother had told us that if you like, we had noticed like some tracks running through like some farmland.
Yeah.
And he had talked with one of his trade union guys about that, and the guy told him that if you fuck up farmland, like just driving through it, it can take a couple of years minimum.
Yeah.
To retreat that section of the land to where it's usable again,
let
alone them driving tanks and shit.
Yeah, tanks, the fucking mortar bombardments.
Yeah. I mean, and not to mention too that, things like tanks and even those track trucks and shit.
Oh yeah.
They leak oil.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just dealing with like the track damage, you're dealing with this thing leaked petrol and, oil and whatever else, not to mention blood.
Yeah.
Bodies, corpses,
mm-hmm.
The farmlands in Europe got pretty fucked up because they were, as they are anywhere, wide open spaces.
Yeah. They were a wide open space, perfect for a battlefield. A lot of them are still trench carved.
Like there was a lot of shit that happened that, they couldn't use those lands.
Yeah, a lot.
Not in the mass way that the countries themselves had gotten used to.
Yeah.
And some of them were still recovering from World War I damage.
Yeah. Which
had already put a strain on everybody.
Yeah.
But America didn't enter the war because we were trying to stop Hitler and the Holocaust. I don't know who told her that, but it certainly wasn't true. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. I don't know if, had that not happened, I don't know if we would have stepped in based on a lot of what I've read in my life. But that is beside the point, which is stopping the Holocaust was a secondary goal to the overall goal of halting and defeating the Axis powers' aggression. I should not have had a better education in this than Candace did, based on the vast differences of our school systems. I was educated in a goddamn cult.
Yeah.
A Bible-thumping cult that had I may have mentioned this before on the show, but I'm going to mention it again now. The Bible-thumping cult ordered all of its textbooks from this company based in Pensacola, Florida called Abeka Book, Abeka. They are a product of Pensacola Christian College.
Okay.
Pensacola Christian College, or PCC, has a private beach, or they did. I don't know anymore, but I'm going to talk I'm going to talk about everything that I knew about them that I'm going to still consider as fact because I haven't looked into them in years. Anyway, PCC had a private beach that had a divider running down the center of it, like a good solid wall.
Yeah.
That wall was one side for men, one side for women.
Did it go out into the water too?
Yeah. As far as I understand it, it does go out quite a bit.
Jesus.
You're not allowed to swim around the wall. That can result in expulsion. Men and women did not share same elevators. Not even like if they were married.
So if you're a married couple going to check in on your child that's attending the college, like some college parents do, I don't know if it works for parents. I know that for the students, though, they have separate, like, everything as much as possible. Okay. So they're segregated by gender.
The only version of Christianity allowed to be spoken of on campus is Baptist.
Okay.
I was learning about this being in a Pentecostal Christian school.
Okay.
It would have been the same had I been a Lutheran or a Catholic. God forbid. They really don't like the fucking Catholics in the Abeka Book program.
Yeah.
Like our history books were rife with like, the Catholics are bad because...
Okay.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's the worst. But yeah, anything other than Baptists. And yes, for those listening, I did call a Pentecostal church a cult, and I will not back down from that. I'm not going to tell you which one I went to, but it was fucked up.
I've grown up listening to the stories of what happened there. That is,
I have spared you a lot of details.
Yeah. Just what you've told me, it sounds like a cult.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It totally was. Yeah. Here's how you know you're in a cult. Okay. If you're ever wondering, like, am I in a cult right now? It don't feel like a cult. These people are all right. This is what I want you to do. Ask anybody their opinion on anything. If you don't get an immediate answer of what their opinion is, but their opinion starts off with, like, let's say you ask them something like, what do you think's going to happen this week with the weather? Well, the pastor says, if that's the first phrase that comes out of their mouth to qualify whatever else is going to come out of their fucking mouth, congratulations, you're in a cult. Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
I got that phrase so fucking often.
Mm-hmm.
It would be things like, oh man, you think the Jaguars are going to win today? Well, the pastor says.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking swear, these people didn't have a thought of their own. It was always, well, pastor says.
Mm-hmm.
You could ask him anything. Any major issue, and sometimes even minor ones, and it would be front-loaded with, well, pastor says.
Okay.
I got to where I didn't want to talk to anybody anymore.
Yeah. And now I know how to execute the cult for my D&D campaign, because I've been trying to figure out, like, what's a great way to just silently introduce a cult to the party. Now I know.
Well, there you go.
Because none of my players are going to be smart enough to figure that one out.
Yeah. Well, so point number 5. Czechoslovakian Germans did live in the Czech area for centuries. And an estimate I read said that 3 million were expelled during the post-war period. And an estimate said 30,000 may have died during the May to August period in 1945. Many of them that were expelled were allowed one suitcase to leave with and had to give up their land and home and the like. And many were actually kept as laborers in camps. So, once again, all of that is true to an extent, but it's not 12 fucking million people.
Yeah.
Now she's putting, I feel like she watched a documentary that put the entire post-World War II losses on this movement.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. And as I said before too, if these people were looking at the Nazis that had occupied them, maybe stolen their friends' homes or lands or whatever, and they wanted to exact revenge. I don't condone that, but I understand. And you can't possibly get into the mind of somebody in that time period that was faced with that and said, oh, no. Your side lost. You don't get to keep that.
Yeah. Especially not if it's one of those few, I only say fortunate because they survived.
Yeah.
Fortunate souls that made it back to their home to find that, such and such Nazi officer still in my home.
Yeah. That or even like, and this is of course just us bullshitting here, but like, even if, they fucking get back there and they've got like, I don't know, like they claim spoils of war or something like that. And like I said, it's like, oh no, buddy, your side lost.
Yeah.
You need to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't like it, but they got ejected during the best time of the year. May to August.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not winter yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
you've got plenty of time to
try
and find something.
They mentioned that it was German-speaking, Czechs that were ejected or sent to prison camps or what have you. And again, without getting further, context to the story on the outside, like it looks bad. And it is, if that's all true.
Yeah.
But I would venture to say that there were probably several 100,000 of them that were Hitler stands.
Mm-hmm.
That were Germany stands. That were like, yeah, we're going to be ruling this bitch in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And then the war turns and, hey, y'all remember what that dude said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Y'all remember him throwing Jews into trains?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, I lost my cousin due to this. Let's go fuck some shit up,
Yeah.
Like, I don't, again, not condoning it, but I understand.
Yeah, I doubt that they'd just, like, go after any random Czech that was speaking or had the ability to speak German.
Yeah.
Because
considering a lot of them spoke German.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay.
They had been there for 1,000 years.
Like, okay.
Well, the Germans were brought in. I found out the Germans were brought in because they were providing skilled labor.
Okay.
Like masonry and artistry and shit like that.
Okay.
So they were brought in as skilled laborers at one point of the Czech Empire.
So that's why they were.
Yeah, that's why they were there and why they stayed and why their culture flourished within Czechoslovakia.
Yeah. So, of course, they naturally have that German speaking to them.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like, Brian and Steve down the street, oh yeah, they speak German, but they're cool.
Yeah.
They helped hide so-and-so, or look, they didn't start waving the flag outside their house.
Yeah.
Now, David down the fucking street, again, not condoning, but also, David down the street, he started flying that flag the moment them troops came into town.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
go pay him a visit.
Yeah.
Maybe we should see what's up. Yeah.
See if he was flying the flag for survivability or if he actually believed in it.
Yeah. Like I feel like in the small towns and villages where everyone kind of knows each other, or even within neighborhoods where everyone kind of knows each other, everyone has to rely on each other a bit because war sucks for everybody.
Yeah.
I feel like they would have known who sucked.
Yeah.
And who was cool. I feel like that's more of a thing that would have happened. I'm not condoning, the expulsion or the killing of mass amounts of people, but I feel like there's more context to this than we're getting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with her tacitly that this is bad, but I think there needs to be more information. Yeah. I wouldn't be okay with this with anybody, but come on.
Yeah.
So
there should still be some more frontline proof on it.
Yeah. Other than a fucking documentary that she probably didn't even watch all the way through.
Yeah.
So, moving on. All of this is terrible, but something that Candace isn't telling you here is how the Jews were treated post-war across Europe and America. They weren't treated well either. and the State of Israel was founded as a way to send them away to occupy a place elsewhere, which is part of what led to decades of aggression in that part of the world since 1948. But by focusing on the Germans, Candace avoids the topic entirely, which should be woven into her version of all of this, but she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Given the focus on shaming the European powers and how she has jumped on Israel for the Gaza genocide, something she didn't do in the years leading up to the October 7th, 2023 attacks on Israel. I'm saying all of this because it's been clear to me more often over the last couple of weeks that what I thought and honestly hoped was a good take from Candace, that the Gaza genocide is a very real thing that is happening even now. I think what may have been obvious to some listeners hit me full in the face on her recent shows from this week, which of course we will be covering next week.
Yeah.
It's just that her focus is not on the people of Gaza. It's not on the people of Palestine. She hasn't had anyone from Palestine really speak on the topic on her show. It has been Jewish voices speaking for or against the genocide, but no Palestinians. While someone like Shireen from It Could Happen Here might not want to speak with Candace, there are many others that would, and probably are even fans of hers. This is akin to asking for a perspective on the civil rights struggle from an academic that wasn't involved. There are people alive that were involved that will tell their stories. But anyway, much has been said about Candace's anti-Semitism. She will say she isn't an anti-Semite, but actions speak louder than denials. The next episode, it'll be on full display, and naturally, it's attached to 9/11 Trutherism.
God.
Yep.
You know the amount of people I've... Oh, God. This... Okay. I'm not speaking badly on all D&D players.
Okay.
But I've been in some groups of D&D players. You know, trying to locate and find the ones that are now my friends, and I love playing D&D with them because they're not batshit fucking crazy. I came into a group of people that I was like, okay, these guys might actually be kind of chill, you know? They're down for my weird-ass inventions as an artificer and shit. And then I decided that, you know what, I'll stay in the call this time, and I won't just leave after session.
Right.
Sitting there, and they're like, yeah, man, did you hear about such and such accusation against Trump? Oh, yeah, no, you know, I think that's bullshit. Granted, this was before January 6th.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're talking defense and, you know, offense of them.
Yeah.
They're being fair at first, and then sitting there and just like, man, you know, what? Fucking... Coming up on it, January 6th happens, and they're like, oh man, you know, the country has never been seen as this weak before. And then I go, well, I mean, there was 9/11, and unless we're just gonna forget about 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or, you know, any of the outside of attacks that have hurt us. And they go, oh, Pearl Harbor and 9/11 didn't exist. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Care to run that by me again, Chief? I think I heard some static on my end. 9/11 and Pearl Harbor never happened. And I said, oh, okay. So what you're telling me is that boats were never bombed, and a pair of towers that have been standing forever, not forever, but
decades,
that got tragically hit by planes that had been taken over. None of that happened. None of the death or chaos in New York, right?
New York, and also the Pentagon got hit with a plane as well.
Yeah, I forgot.
Almost no one ever talks about that, but it happened, and there's a memorial at the Pentagon for it.
Yeah. I forget about that one.
Yeah.
As do most. But you know, you telling me that all the death and destruction and mayhem that caused that got us into the Middle East.
To the Middle East for war again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Desert Storm 2, Electric Boogaloo, yeah.
Sorry.
I just like rhyming that. It's fun.
But, you're telling me all that death and destruction that has been cataloged and distributed multiple times in multiple different forms of media never happened? My family members that were in I think Mom said it was like great aunt or aunt.
One of them, yeah. Yeah, she had we got family stories from people that that survived, that saw it happen.
Yeah, like the one, her and her husband both worked in the tower.
Yeah, and they happened to be off that day. Yeah,
they happened to be, actually, no,
yeah, we don't need to get into all of it. Yeah, still, we don't need to get into it.
No. It's just, you're telling me that the family that witnessed the destruction didn't witness the destruction, didn't go through the fear that their spouse was in the tower and, oh my God, they could be dead? You're telling me none of that trauma actually happened?
Yeah.
No, it didn't happen. Towers were never real. What? Okay,
these are the same kinds of people that are like, birds aren't real.
I can forgive the ignorance of, the towers were never hit. But I cannot forgive the ignorance that the World Trade Center never existed.
Yeah.
That is one I can never forget.
Yeah. Well, Candace is a truther.
Okay. What is truther again?
Truthers are people that have, it's this whole other like subculture of humans that basically think that the World Trade Center attacks were an inside job. They can't conceive of the fact that someone like Osama bin Laden and other people would hate America so much that they would devise a plan to do what they pulled off. They can't conceive of that. So it had to be an inside job that involved all these other people that never did. And her trutherism, holy shit. The episode I have to write up, that, like I said, travels back to this week we're on right now.
Mm-hmm.
It is insane.
For somebody who seems to really love talking shit about America, I'm a little bit surprised that she can't conceive that somebody else would dislike the country that she lives in and dislikes.
Especially because since most of the 9/11 planning and execution of steps leading up to it happened during the Clinton administration.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought that was great fodder for the Republicans and anyone that had a boner to hate the Clintons.
Yeah.
Most of that shit happened during the Clinton administration, the whole buildup. And they never go after them for it. It's like, it's so easy. It's so, you could just blame Hillary for so much of it. She wasn't involved, but you could just blame her because she was in the White House. She was the president's wife, I
mean, fuck's sake, you're willing to go as far as to fake evidence that
the French first lady is a man. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not take that just little teeny tiny step to falsify just a little tiny bit of information and go, Hillary knew about all of it and she could have stopped it, but she didn't. Don't vote for her. It's right there.
It's all right there, and they've never done it, and it's always bugged me that I'm like, this is fertile ground for your bullshit. Why?
Yeah.
But they don't do it. But so. Moving on, Candace did an episode on Cardi B being okay with porn this week and offered her marriage advice.
What?
That's right. Yeah.
World War II, Cardi B.
Yeah.
Okay.
We won't be covering that, but we will be covering her 9/11 episode that would have rounded out the week, but we'll be saving that to run in conjunction with this current week's 9/11 show. Candace has a lot to say about celebrities and celebrity culture, and I find most of it to be gross. So unless it's egregious, like her take on Andrew Tate, I see no reason to follow it on this show. Her actual political bad takes are enough, usually. What is it, Cardi B? Cardi B loves herself some porn, and Candace don't like no porn. And Cardi B's husband apparently, reportedly, allegedly, fucked around on her with a groupie or some shit. I don't know, because I don't care. I couldn't care less than I do.
You know how much I know that doesn't matter as a news story?
You didn't hear about it?
I didn't hear about it. And also, we have a wall of magazines at the store.
Yeah.
And that wall of magazines changes practically to, oh, Henry Cavill got his dick out on screen? Here's a magazine about it. And how he's a foul bastard for whipping it out and jacking it. I haven't seen jack shit.
Best Superman ever.
Granted, that is some bullshit I just made up. Henry Cavill has, to my knowledge, not pulled his dick out and started jacking it on screen.
Well, he is part of the Warhammer series now.
Oh, so...
I don't know. I want him to be part of the Warhammer series.
I want him to...
He wants to be part of Warhammer.
If they put him in as a Supermarine, that would be fucking perfect.
They want him to be part of Warhammer. He loves him some Warhammer.
Oh, yeah. No,
he's a nerd.
I've seen plenty of, like, they asked him what he was a nerd about, and he's like, honestly, Warhammer 40K. And he started to have a conversation with the other guy, and then they, like, cut it off, and they went...
Who was the other guy?
I don't remember who the other guy was.
I think it... Like, when I saw the thing, I was like, is that Bucky Barnes? But I couldn't tell.
I think it was Bucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they had just done, like, a Mission Impossible movie or something.
Oh, right.
But yeah, no, he started nerding out with him, and then they're like talking Warhammer back and forth, and Henry Cavill looks back at the camera and realizes, oh right, we're still live. Yeah. And goes, let's after the show, let's get together and paint some figurines.
Yeah.
You know. So with Cardi B, I haven't seen jack shit about Cardi B.
Yeah.
If anything, I've seen more shit about Taylor Swift.
I have heard more crap about Cardi B through shows like ours.
Yeah.
Specifically, one thing that I did hear, I don't remember who played it. It might have been Tuckered Out. I don't remember who played it, but somebody actually played a clip of Ben Shapiro reading the lyrics to Cardi B's WAP. It's one of the funniest, unintentionally funniest things I've ever heard. Because he was reading the lyrics as if, like, these are terrible. No one should listen to this. And then he read it in Ben Shapiro voice, and it's so unbelievably funny. Yeah. And somebody put, like, a backtrack of music behind it, so it sounds like it belongs. Like, it sounds like somebody reading it on YouTube. You know, and it's like, oh my God, he actually did that shit.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's crazy. But yeah. So skipping over the Cardi B episode and withholding the 9/11 episode until next week, and not covering the debate between two Jewish men about Gaza, brings us to the end of this week. The last clip I want to play before we move on to our soda of choice for the week is a clip Candace plays of Senator Lindsey Graham, who is easily one of the worst people to ever hold a seat in power in the current version of American politics.
Lindsey Graham on that topic. Listen to what he had to say.
So when we were faced with destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose, and work with them to minimize casualties. Why is it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war? Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay. To Israel, do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state.
There you have it.
Now, Candace goes on to continue her take that all of this rhetoric is to push us into a World War III situation. I counter that while that is what several people in power may want at any given time, I don't think these people are nearly as smart as Candace wants them to be. Mostly because Israel is already a nuclear power and has been since the 1960s, when it is believed by the National Security Archives to have developed the nuclear capabilities in conjunction with South Africa. In researching this stuff, I came across a bunch of stories about how Israel and South Africa ran a lot of chummy joint operations with each other in the midst of apartheid. So right there, without a lot of work involved, Candace could have seen the same threads. But that would put a light on apartheid and racism and possibly things like the state of Rhodesia. Who can say? Certainly not Candace. So on that note, it's time for our soda review, unless you have anything you want to add.
All right.
Uh-huh.
So.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody mentions World War III, nuclear armaments,
yeah,
I'd like to redirect them back to what happened, I want to say earlier this year. Might have been last year, I don't remember.
Uh-huh.
No, it was earlier this year. I want to say February, March, maybe. President Putin had threatened to just destroy Ukraine by bombing them with one of Russia's nuclear bombs.
Right.
He said he made the threat that he would just end them if they didn't stop resisting.
Yeah.
What that resulted in was every single country with nuclear power around them, Ukraine included, and I want to say Bosnia, I'm probably wrong.
Yeah.
Bosnia, which actually holds most of Russia's nuclear armaments. I might be wrong. It's probably...
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
It's one of the other B ones.
Uh-huh.
But they hold a good chunk of the nuclear silos for Russia.
Yeah.
And they have been withholding, as far as I last heard, they've been withholding from doing anything to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been pissing Putin off because they hold most of the artillery firepower that Russia needs.
Yeah.
And they keep going, we just want to stay out of this.
Right.
But he made the threat of nuclear bombardment, which made every other country, including their allied ones, go, hold up.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't going to do that. You can try and launch your nukes, but that's going to result in the Dark Ages being brought back to Russia.
Right.
Because he made the threat, and then less than 24 hours later, public announcement was made, as far as I had understood, that any attempts to do that would result in ensured destruction of Russia.
Right. Well, yeah, all of that I'm not entirely sure of, because so much has honestly happened.
Yeah.
Over this whole thing. But yeah, we will be talking about Russia next week. Oh, it comes up.
Oh, I'm sure.
It comes up because Candace is a Putin stan. She wants to interview him. She says it herself. I'll pull the clip, of course. But she says it herself. She's dying to interview Putin.
Ay.
Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, yeah, oh my God, next week. Oh, the amount of... Yeah, the utterly insane amount of shit. Like I said, though, I have a feeling that her gay frog is all the bullshit with Mrs. Macron.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that she really wants to, like, push hard.
I hope somebody makes a techno remix of her saying that.
No, I hope not.
No. Here's the thing, is the funniest bit of media that I've heard from Alex Jones was the gay frog thing. Uh-huh. That somebody then put a nightclub techno remix trap beat to.
I've heard it. I've heard it, and okay. Now, while that stuff is entertainment,
yeah,
I get it. I do. I get it, and I've chuckled at it too. But, I've also heard other songs that people have done with him, and the guys from Knowledge Fight have pointed out that this, unfortunately, while it has an element of humor,
mm-hmm.
it also has to be noted that it's not, while it's okay for people to laugh at these people, and we absolutely should. We should laugh at these fucking clowns.
Yeah.
You don't want to give them the edge of being humorous to the point where people want to check them out.
Fair enough.
And that's where you run into problems.
Yeah.
It's almost as bad, really, as like fucking Piers Morgan interviewing Candace Owens on his show, and someone else had interviewed Nick Fuentes, Ye's fucking white supremacist best friend. It's as bad as giving these people a platform for anything.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, like Candace's numbers went from like 1.4 million subscribers on YouTube to the day after she did her Piers Morgan interview went to 1.8 million.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, I'll say this again next week, but I had to pull over my car earlier when she said something because I had to do math. I did math in my head and I was like, I cannot have hit the right number.
Yeah.
She mentioned that she has 150 of those signed Candace mugs, the Christ is King ones. She has 150 of them still left. Do you know what 150 times $150 is? I'll save you the math because I know it.
Okay. Yeah.
$22,500.
Oh.
I screamed.
Yeah.
I screamed. I pulled over. I did the math real quick, and I fucking screamed.
Yeah.
She sold, according to her, I think she'd mentioned it at one point. She has sold about that many.
That's unfortunate.
No one should be making $22,000 on 150 of those mugs.
Yeah. Like, I just gotta... as bad as all of that is, at least her fans are marking themselves.
They are. But again, the signed mugs are probably going to go in like a glass case on a shelf.
True.
You're not going to see those in the wild. You might see the $60 version.
Yeah, the normal Christ is King with Candace's.
And even those, there's not many of those left, she says. I didn't do the math on those. I was curious. I was like, okay, she's got 150 of these. I know they're $150. What does that come out to? And then I screamed.
Yeah.
So let's clear our minds with some soda that did not get a really good review from your brother.
No.
What did he say this was akin to?
Okay, so...
Now, for reference, let's start with the name of the soda. It's Buddy's Orange Soda.
Now, to their credit, Buddy's, that is, they make other sodas that, according to my brother, are spot on, that are great. They make grape, raspberry, what have you. They're all great sodas.
We've had their 1919 root beer.
Yeah,
it's the same company.
Yeah,
New Ulm Brewing.
Yeah, it's all really good shit.
Yeah.
But their orange soda, which is what we're going to be drinking today, according to my brother and his girlfriend, tastes like leather. Even kind of smells like leather. Tastes like orange. Smells like orange scented leather. He doesn't know why they fucked it up on this one particular flavor, but they apparently cannot be trusted to make anything orange.
Registered trademark held by New Ulm Brewing Company of Sleepy Eye, Minnesota.
Yep.
That is a hell of a name. All right.
Here, because I know this will make at least two people very satisfied, just gotta get the microphone close and crack. There we go.
There we are.
Yep.
All right, now let's pour it into a beverage glass.
It's orange.
Half the listeners just went to the restroom. Good, Jamie.
Help you along with your urination.
Your morning dues.
Fuck, there's a lot of this.
It's a pint, dude.
I forget about that.
Okay, now the sniff. Honestly, it smells really good.
Yeah, it does smell good. It doesn't smell quite as leathery as he said it would.
Yeah. Maybe they just got a bad can. I don't know.
No, they had a couple cans from it.
Oh, they tried it.
Yeah.
They were like, maybe this one sucks. Maybe the next one's good.
Yeah.
I don't know. It smells all right. Let's give it a shot.
Honestly, it tastes like a tangerine.
Honestly, like I think this is the best orange soda I've ever had.
Yeah.
I'm not even shilling for these fucks. I mean, it's really good actually. I'm kind of down with this.
Maybe it was just a couple bad cans.
I'm glad they gave you the case. Shit.
Yeah.
I might take one into work on occasion.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do an experiment on myself real quick.
Okay.
Well, you see, we poured it out of the can into a glass.
Okay.
They drank it straight from the
can. Okay. All right. So you're gonna crack one open.
Gonna crack one open. See.
Okay.
See what
maybe
occurs here.
See maybe if it sucks directly from the can. Okay.
Yep.
Let's give it a shot.
It's just more aluminum-y.
Okay.
Or as some of you, maybe, you do we have any viewers in Britain?
Oh, I know we have some Aussies.
Well,
I looked over the podcast statistics. Most of it's from America. We have now. That's also assuming that everyone's VPN or everyone isn't using a VPN.
Which, if you are using a VPN,
good for you.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
This soda was a lot better than I thought it'd be.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of other ones in there that might be real.
Well, we'll get those on separate weeks. Yeah, no, that was actually pretty pleasant.
Yeah. I think he just got a couple bad cans.
Yeah. Well, don't tell him. Keep those in here. Don't be like, hey, your taste buds, they're the worst.
Do you want to finish this one and then I'll just drink the can?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. All right. Well, I'm going to set this down for a second.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this week. You got anything to add before I close it out?
Something that I learned about earlier this week that I told you about in the car. Didn't know that the lead singer of Disturbed was a Zionist recently.
Yeah.
That was a shocking bit of information that I didn't know about until I had asked a coworker if he'd listened to The Sound of Silence.
Yeah. And he was like,
Yeah, he told me that they were a douchebag band, and I was like, what the fuck do you mean a douchebag band? I mean, I know they, have a bunch of songs about rebellion and shit, but I didn't know that. I don't remember the guy's name.
David Dryman.
Yeah.
Yeah, him personally, we looked into him, and he's very much a Zionist, and that sucks a bit because we like Disturbed's music, but as I told you though, I still like Megadeth.
Yeah.
I still like Megadeth, even though I know Dave Mustaine is a friend of Alex Jones, has been on InfoWars a lot of times. I will still listen to Megadeth.
Yeah.
Because these bands are more than just one person. And unfortunately, these two guys, Dryman and Mustaine, happen to be the front faces of their bands.
Yeah.
But that being said, sometimes you have to separate the art from the artist. But, I still like Disturbed's first and second albums. Even their third album, most of the songs on it. I haven't listened to much of anything of theirs since. But, yeah, I mean, it sucks. It sucks when an artist sucks, but you gotta pick who you follow. If you don't want to follow them, that's up to you. But I'm still gonna have these guys on my playlists. So, I mean, I really like "Addicted to Chaos" by Megadeth. It's such a good fucking song. But that and "Sweating Bullets" from Countdown to Extinction, which again, a banger of an album. But anyway, that's High Speed Dirt is such a fucking speedy song. Sorry, I'm Megadething out over here. But anyway, so that's it, I guess, for us this week.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope this has been entertaining, and I hope you all have learned something. And yes, Candace still sucks. She might suck more than we thought she'd sucked before.
We thought she at least had a redemption point.
She doesn't.
No,
I'm gonna do a little spoiler alert. She does not. And
That's
oh my God, it's so bad.
I was holding out a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's what I'm gonna. Oh my God, next week's episode. Fuck. Oh, I'm gonna have to listen to her shit so many times. Okay. All right, that's it, guys. Have a great. Oh, right. Wait. Before we close out, we have a website worked up. It is gishgallupgirl.com. Go there. You can find our email links. They're not hard. Honestly, it's Thomas Anderson at gishgallupgirl.com or Matthew Anderson at gishgallupgirl.com. What else? Yeah, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/gishgallupgirl. We don't have any patrons yet, but hopefully, soon. Although I have been contacted by a couple of people, and I am going to set up a $5 level and a $10 level just because people have asked, and I was like, all right, if they ask, I'll do it. And people asked, so I'm going to set those up tonight. Thinking hard here. I think that's...
Are you going to change which day is release day for episodes? Since
probably not.
No,
we'll just record on one day and then release on the regular day.
Okay.
These people seem to be used to that. The last bit of house cleaning here is, I just had it in my head. Oh yeah, do not follow us on Twitter. The Twitter account is entirely for, lurking in Candace's Twitter. You can find us on Mastodon though, at Gish Gallup Girl. That should be an easy one for you. And God, fuck, there was one other thing. Oh yeah, I've been asked whether or not we'll be on Apple Podcasts, and no. No, we will not. And I will tell you why. Anyone who is pushing for that has never actually done it. Because every step I got through on the Apple Podcast submission process was another step of hell. They finally lost me forever when they wanted my debit card information to finish setting up my account. And that was where I pulled the plug, because literally no one else has asked for that. So if you want the RSS link, you can copy it from the page of gishgallupgirl.com. The RSS link is right there. You can put it into any podcast reader or any podcast scraper you're using, whether it's iTunes or Podcast Addict or Spotify or whatever the fuck. But yeah, I am not personally going to be dealing with Apple. I don't care if someone uses their iTunes to play our podcast, but it will not be on Apple Podcasts unless they do a massive reorganization of how they handle shit. And since that is unlikely, I'm just going to say no. So that's it for us this week, I think.
Yep.
Have a great, whatever the fuck this is for you, weekend or day off or work day. I don't know.
Yep. And,
you do you.
Happy 4th of July as well.
Oh yeah. Cause we're going to be, you won't hear us again until after the 4th. Bye.
Ciao.